Section 3.5 has to do a whole lot with what we did in section 3.4. It's actually kind of like 3.4 in reverse. So today we're going to practice showing that lines are parallel. So yesterday I was like, hey, these lines are parallel. These are all the relationships that are true. Today it's kind of the reverse. You'll be seeing a relationship and you'll decide if that's enough to show that the lines are parallel. Okay? So, quick review. Parallel lines never intersect. Very good. So, there are a lot of ways to determine that two lines are parallel. Okay? There's actually 7 ways that we're going to talk about today to show that two lines are parallel. So, if the corresponding angles are congruent, the lines are parallel. If the alternate interior angles are congruent, the lines are parallel. Do you guys remember the other ones? No. Corresponding alternate interior, alternate exterior. If the alternate exterior angles are congruent, the lines are parallel. Now, which ones have to be supplementary? Same side interior, or actually same side exterior works as well. Same side exterior, I'm not sure why it got left out. Like, it appears every now and then, but not as much as the rest of them. I don't know if whoever discovered it, got in a fight with everyone else. They threw him out of the club. I don't know. But same side exterior is just, it's there, it happens, it exists, but it's not as common as the other ones. If two lines are parallel to the same line, then they are parallel to each other. That's kind of a new one. It always reminds me of like the transitive property, like if two lines are parallel, like if line 1 is parallel to 2 and 2 is also parallel to 3, 1 and 3 are parallel, sort of that same idea. And then if two lines are both perpendicular to the same line, they're parallel to one another. So if they both make right angles with the same line, they're parallel to one another. So those are 7 different ways we're going to use today to show that two lines are parallel to one another. Here's example 1. So is there enough information to conclude that M is parallel to N? Yes. Why do you say yes? They're both 85 degrees. What are those? It's on the board. Corresponding angles are congruent. You need all 3 of those parts to get this correct. I need to see the word yes. I need to see what the angles are. They're corresponding. And that they're also congruent. Okay? So 3 parts needed. Yes or no. The angle relationship, and what's so special about them. Corresponding angles are congruent. Questions? Here's number 2. So, again, we're trying to decide if there's enough information to conclude that M and N are parallel. Here is always a good indicator that there's not enough information. Do we know anything about any of the angles down here? No. So do you think we can make any conclusions about these two lines related to one another? No. So there is not enough information. You can't say, no, they're not parallel. We just don't know. Not enough information. What we're looking at here is that there's a linear pair that adds to 180. We already know that. That's the definition of being a linear pair. So if one of the angles is completely left out of any of the information, that's a good indicator that you don't have enough information. All right, here is number 3. What am I looking at? Alternate interior angles. And they are? They're congruent. So are the lines parallel if the alternate interior angles are congruent? Yeah. So the answer is yes. Alternate interior angles are congruent. Now, I'm trying to shorten this up as much as I can. So AI stands for alternate interior. That's the angle symbol with an S after it. Angles are congruent. Questions? All right, here's number 4. We are trying to decide, check the directions again, M and N. Can we conclude that M and N are parallel?
No.
Well, N is parallel to L, and M is parallel to L. So do you think they're parallel to each other?
No.
Read the second to last thing you wrote down about ways to show they're parallel. Yeah, if they're parallel to the same line, they've got to be parallel to each other as well. So yes, they're both parallel to line L. Same directions as we've been working with. Is there enough information to conclude that M is parallel to N?
Yeah, no.
Yeah, no. Okay, pick one.
No. Yes.
Pick a different one.
Yes.
Yes, why?
Because
Same side interior angles are
parallel and
supplementary. Perfect. So yes, there's enough information. What angles are we looking at? We're looking at same side interiors, and they are related to each other in the fact that they are supplementary. Same directions are M and N parallel. I heard a no. Does anyone want to defend or disagree? What type of angles are we looking at?
Right.
Those are corresponding angles. What needs to be true about corresponding angles?
Oh, doesn't there have to be like a line?
They have to be congruent. Are those congruent?
Yeah.
No.
You're telling me that 60 and 120 are the same thing? No.
I can't see. I ain't got my glasses on.
So this is no, and you could, I don't even think not enough information works on this one because there is enough information. I know for a fact these cannot be parallel. So you can give a definite no on this one. Corresponding angles are not congruent. Okay, number 7, same old question. Are the lines parallel? And you're saying yes, and why would you say yes?
Because the two boxes.
The 2 boxes.
Wait, hold on.
They go equal 90 degrees.
Yes. There are actually 2 ways to prove this. A lot of you said words like 90 degrees and congruent. That's great, but you have to tell me what angles are congruent. So yes, corresponding angles are congruent. Or the last thing you wrote down is that they could be perpendicular to the same line, which also happens here. What type of angles are those? Those are vertical angles. Vertical angles are always congruent.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
So does that tell us anything about the relationship between M and N?
No.
No, they might still be parallel. We just can't definitely conclude. So this is not enough information. Okay, here's the second way questions might be presented today. They're saying, what would X have to be if I want to ensure that V and W are parallel? So what type of angles are these that I'm looking at? These are same side interiors. If I want the lines to be parallel, what has to be true about these?
They have to equal 180.
They have to add to 180. So that's the equation that I'm going to set up. 70 plus 2x has to equal 180 if I want these lines to be parallel. Now what?
You gotta cross
We have to solve for x. So what are we going to do?
that. Minus 7.
Subtract 70 from both sides.
Alright,
Divide both sides by 2. 55, yep. Same question here. Find the value of x. We don't have to plug it back in and find the angles. We're just finding the value of x.
Oh.
So if I want the lines to be parallel, what has to be true about these angles?
They both have to equal to 90.
They'd be equal to
180.
That's 180. Like
That's a
one has to
180.
equal 90 and the other one has to equal 90.
They'd be equal to each other.
Period.
These are alternate exterior angles. For the lines to be parallel, the alternate exterior angles have to be equal. So I'm going to put those equal to each other. I'm going to solve for the x.
How do you know when?
I got it. It's
Alternate interior, alternate exterior corresponding. Those are the
17.
ones that have to be equal.
17.
Same side interior, same side exterior. Those are the ones that add to 180.
It's up there. 17.
Okay. So we need to get the x's together.
Yeah. Oh, you see something upside?
Then subtract the 2.
Yeah. Did the 500?
Then divide by the 2.
You get that 17?
17.
No.
Now, if it said what is the value of those angles, then you'd plug it back in. But we're just looking for the value of the x.
Correspond.
Yeah, so if I want to show that the lines are parallel, the corresponding angles need to be equal to each other. So I'm going to do 11x plus 4 equals 114, or the way it's written on the board, 114 equals 11x plus 4. And then you solve for the x, it's going to be 10. Yep, this is a pretty easy one to do in your head. Okay? What's the relationship here?
Well, I know it corresponds. Well, we can't get the
Those are what?
Alternate.
Alternate.
Alternate
Interior.
interior. What do I know about alternate interior?
They're parallel. They
No.
correspond.
No. That they.
Yeah, if the lines are parallel, you have both parts. If the lines are parallel, they have to be congruent. The angles have to be congruent, the alternate interior angles, okay? So I'm going to set those equal. I'm going to find the value that x would have to be. So in order for the lines to be parallel, the x would have to be 8. Questions? All right, we can keep it moving for the next ones. Number 13. These are same side interior angles. So if I want these lines to be parallel, what has to be true about these angles? They have to be supplementary. This is the odd one, okay? So, if I want the lines to be parallel, these two angles have to add to 180. So 3x plus 5 plus 115 would have to equal 180 in order for these lines to be parallel to one another. Combine like terms, you get 3x plus 120 equals 180. Subtract and divide. You get 20. Where'd you get 30?
Yeah, it's 3, not 2. Yeah, 25.
Somebody said it. Corresponding. They are in the same position. Same position means corresponding. Like here's the intersection. It's upper left, upper left. corresponding. Okay. Another indicator that they're corresponding is they're on the same side, and then like they're both above or they're both below. They can't both be inside or both be outside. Tricky. But anyway, they're corresponding. If I want the lines to be parallel, the corresponding angles must be congruent. So make those equal. Pretty easy one to solve. What does the x have to be? 8. Awesome. So I am going to pass out your homework. If you look over here on the board, we are one lesson away from taking a test. So make sure you're getting this homework done. Make sure you're keeping up with the notes. Make sure you're asking questions because that test is right around the corner.